Welcome back into the Rocc Pod, presented by the Royal Oak Chamber of Commerce. I am John Gay from Jag and Detroit Podcasts.
I am Elisa Bibby, your local neighborhood realtor with Keller Williams Advantage.
I am Andrea Arndt, an attorney at Dickinson Wright.
And with us today is Todd Fenton, the Deputy City Manager for Royal Oak. Todd, it's great to be with you. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me, John. It's great to be here with you, too.
So when I was talking to the Executive Director of the Chamber, Shelley Kemp, yesterday about our interview with you today, she was effusive in her praise of you and the great relationship that the city and the chamber now have. She's just so thrilled that the city and the chamber have been working so well together lately. Could you speak just to your relationship with the chamber, both as the city and you yourself?
Absolutely. The chamber, for me, is probably the largest asset that I have in the city of Royal Oak in order to be successful at what we do, which is both attracting new businesses into the city and retaining the ones that we have in the city. The chamber is not only a great resource in terms of the large amount of membership of Royal Oak companies that they have that you get to interact with during their many events, but most importantly, and this gets into my relationship with Shelley, we share a lot of information. She shares concerns and criticisms and problems that some chamber members may have doing business within the city. I can take that back to City Hall and enact policy or change some procedures or look at doing things in a different way. I mean, outdoor dining is something that we've always had in the city, but the pandemic really forced us to reevaluate the extent to which we would actually put that into our right of ways and actually closing streets and things like that. So Shelley was probably the first person that I met when I joined the city of Royal Oak, because I knew that the executive director of the chamber would be one of my strengths. And we've just had a great relationship. You know, going back 2014 is when I started here. I've worked with many chambers across the state, and bar none, this is one of the best ones.
Glad it's such a good relationship. Can you tell our audience a little bit about the Planning Commission and some of the new ideas and projects that you're working on?
Yes, Andrea. I think the largest project our Planning Commission is working on this year is revising our master plan, which is essentially setting out the land use categories throughout the city. What sorts of buildings are allowed where, what type of uses are allowed where. This is something that involves a lot of work, not only with the third party that'll eventually assist us with revising our master plan, but city staff. And then there's a very, very important community outreach component, getting the feedback of our residents and our business community, because without their buy-in, this will not be a successful endeavor.
You mentioned some community outreach. What are a couple of programs in case people are interested in getting more involved?
Well, when we bring in a firm to actually begin this process, we'll actually be doing town hall type meetings. We'll have various public meetings. We'll give surveys, opportunities via our website to provide feedback on exactly what the sorts of changes being proposed are.
Well, thank you, Todd. You know, we always want to be the first to know what's coming into downtown Royal Oak. So what are some new businesses in general? And really interested in hearing about if you have anybody coming into the old Hermann spot.
We do have somebody that is actively looking at the old Hermann spot. Give Thanks Bakery. They have a location in Rochester. I've actually been working with the owner for over a year and a half now. What was great about Hermann's is it obviously was a neighborhood staple. It was a destination for a lot of people to come into Royal Oak. It also was a very old building. It had been, under the same ownership for quite a amount of time, and having a new baker move into that spot presents its own sorts of challenges. There's a lot of updating that needs to be done on the inside. It's quite a significant amount of money that Give Thanks is putting into that spot. But I think you're going to start seeing some changes on the facade. It's not going to be too different from what you've seen. It is a historically designated site, so any changes to the exterior do need to be approved by our historic commission. But very excited to see that. Personally, I'm very excited that it's remaining a bakery. I think some of the criticisms that you have from some of the community is when those businesses that have been long established in the city, when they leave for whatever reason, and the use changes, that spurs a lot of negative dialogue within the community, and especially something as beloved as Hermann's. It's great to see Give Thanks really taking that flag and continuing to move forward.
Well, Herman's will definitely be missed, but I'm really excited about give thanks because that's like my motto for every single day. Just give thanks for everything that comes along. So I can't wait to give thanks for some new sweet treats.
Yeah, and if it tastes good, giving thanks is not too bad.
Todd, there's kind of, a mix of retail and non-retail in downtown Royal Oak. What makes the city conducive to bringing in new businesses, the city in general and then downtown specifically?
Well, the city in general, and this is going back a few years, but it isn't a mistake that you're seeing buildings going vertical within the city. It was a real conscious effort, starting with our city commission and working with our Downtown Development Authority and the Chamber of Commerce, the business community. And I want to say about 2013, before I came to the city commission formed a downtown task force. Essentially, its charge was, how do we continue to bring new businesses into the city? And how do we better support the ones that are already here? They believed the city needed more office users in downtown Royal Oak because downtown Royal Oak was very, very popular and thriving from 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. Foot traffic, though, was wanting between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. And you can connect the dots pretty easily right there because we didn't have a huge portfolio of office users in the city, those 9 to 5 workers that are going out and frequenting, whether it's Bruegger's for breakfast and bagels or any of our many restaurants for lunch and happy hour. And so when I joined the city, that was really one of my primary charges was, can you attract new developments into the city that would bring office uses into the city that were not there before? And we used our surface parking lots as places that we could put these new buildings. And from there, you have to look at where are you putting parking to you take parking off, or do you put it back in, which is where you've seen 2 new parking structures come up in the last 5-6 years. We've grown very successful now, sort of as an environment that is an alternative to your traditional office markets, which are Detroit, Southfield, Troy, predominantly in this area. We're an urban walkable downtown. We offer that feel, but we are now offering a lot more to professional services companies that probably had not looked in here. And I can point to 2 very recent developments, one downtown and one outside of downtown. Agri Realty Company, publicly traded company, is moving into the old Art Van on Woodward.
Ah, okay.
Their current space actually won various architects award, and I can't wait to see what they're going to bring to the Woodward Corridor. They were looking at the activity in downtown Royal Oak all the way through Birmingham and Troy and surrounding areas. And that was where they wanted to be. You say Royal Oak, and it has a connotation, especially for a workforce below the age of 40, that I want to work down there. I know there's a lot that I can do besides just work. And especially if you're going to hybrid work models where you're spending a certain amount of time at home and a certain amount of time in the office, you want to be in an office in a place that you'd like to be at.
Yeah.
And everybody is fighting for talent right now. Workforce development and finding talent is by far the number one issue across all sectors, not just retail, not just restaurants, but professional companies as well. And talent is dictating a lot of where they want to go. So that in and of itself then is driving where the C-suite is deciding to make their site location decisions. And that actually is my segue into Harley Ellis Devereaux, HED, architecture company that's been in Southfield for the last 40 years. They're moving into downtown Royal Oak. They're actually going to take the vector form space that's above Buffalo Wild Wings and Bar Louie in 2023. So when we're having a conversation about things that are coming into the city, short term, I have things that are coming in the next month or so that I may have been working on for the last month or the last year. I'm also focusing on 2023 and 2024 because the real estate market is that tight where you really have to start looking where there are opportunities and where there are companies making these decisions. Going back to the downtown task force recommendation, we are seeing that the more foot traffic, the more people you're bringing into the city, especially during the day, opens the eyes of other brokers, site selectors that are working with retailers, either nationally or not, to consider Royal Oak because you can make your numbers because the people are there. At some point, right, the restaurant has to provide a good product and have a great place where people want to congregate. Our job is to try to provide the people and the opportunity to thrive here in the city. And that's really what I look at in terms of economic development is really setting the table for any type of user to come in and succeed. And that's bringing people, it's making investments in our downtown. We just opened a new downtown park in Royal Oak Centennial Commons, which in and of itself is a 2.5 acre beautiful park that will serve as a gathering place for people that are working here, for our residents coming in. And I'm already starting to see significant real estate activity around that park for people that want to locate as close to it as they can.
Yeah, I was really glad to hear you guys decided to put a park in, because oftentimes as downtowns are growing, they want to monopolize on all the businesses that they can get. But I think it's really important that we still save that green space and allow people to still get out and enjoy nature.
Yeah, that park in particular was part of a larger plan that I've been working on pretty much since I walked in the door. And that ended up becoming the new city hall, the new police station, the new parking structure, the new park, and then what you now know as the Henry Ford outpatient facility here in downtown Royal Oak, a $70 million investment into our downtown. Curious enough, working on that project, it was originally a spec office building.
Huh.
And we talked with a variety of tenants, and it may not be a well-known secret, but I'll say it on air. We had conversations with Google about moving down there.
Wow.
Into that building. It did not pan out because we actually had litigation that was started over some of the project. We prevailed ultimately, and the project is built, but it didn't fit with their timeline at the time. But it was actively a 140,000 square foot speculative office building, which is pretty risky. And this was in 2016, 17. It would be unheard of in 2022 to embark upon something like that. And I'm not going to say that there isn't any day that I walk by the Henry Ford and say a silent prayer of, thank God I don't have to worry about filling this with office users right now. This is a tenant that's going to be a member of downtown Royal Oak for the next 30 years and is actually doing the exact same thing we wanted to with office users. How do you bring more people into the city, people from outside the city into the area? You've got Henry Ford with their 300 plus employees that they've got in the building that were not here before. At full capacity, you have 5,000 appointments in that building each week.
Wow.
So we haven't even begun to see the economic impact of that building in downtown Royal Oak.
Do you think that because of the way companies are now working and allowing employees to maybe have more of a hybrid work environment where they're working somewhat at home, somewhat in the office, that companies in Royal Oak are going to maybe have less office space, which would allow just a larger number of companies to be in Royal Oak?
That's a great question, Andrea. And yes, we are seeing that. And I can point to a couple different examples, one of them being Vector Form that, has been in downtown Royal Oak for 2013. Harley Stelvro is moving into their space, but Vector Form, it's not that Vector Form is going insolvent or Vector Form's leaving the city. Vector Form is still looking for space in the city. I can't identify actually where their finalist site is. It is in downtown Royal Oak. Again, it's a space planning exercise for them, right? They have always been, as a tech company with offices in California, Germany, various other places, to some extent, they've always been remote. This has just accelerated that, and it's accelerated it in terms of they've got talent that worked remotely in California, and that's a whole nother issue. You've got some workforces that are now migrating to other locations because they want to be in areas that are more affordable. And if you can do your job anywhere, is that something that we should be actually actively promoting for economic development? Royal Oak's not going to do it alone, but we've talked with Oakland County and the state of Michigan about trying to promote Michigan as a base for young talent, that the quality of life here is as good as anywhere else, and the affordability, we are much more affordable than the East Coast or the West Coast, or the South for that matter.
I will agree with that one.
And you're seeing at one of the office buildings that came up, the Etkin project on 11 Mile in Maine. Gongos is a company that was in there. They were just acquired by a Belgian firm. They're not leaving Royal Oak, but because the paradigm has shifted so much more toward remote for them, and they were always there. They were a hoteling operation. When I walked through their space the first time, I was obsessed with like the red lights and the green lights on these desks. And it was, well, no one has a set desk. If there's a red light on it, somebody took that one for the day. And if you're really, really attached to a desk, you can reserve them in advance. But they were always doing this. So now they're looking at, well, we don't need all of this space. Maybe we sublet this space, part of it, for another company. And then, yes, you end up having the same amount of people in that suite, but it's not the same company. It's multiple companies.
Todd, you mentioned 11 Mile there, and I know you're talking about 11 Mile in Maine, but can you speak a little bit to the expansion of Royal Oak beyond just the downtown area? We're talking 11 Mile and other areas. There's stuff coming in beyond just downtown, right?
Absolutely. And the Agri project that I had just mentioned was probably one of our largest businesses coming into the city, regardless of whether downtown or on Woodward, but very significant investment. I am focused as much as I can on the Woodward Corridor because just the economics of downtown. We have a DDA. We have a lot of businesses that have their own associations, whether it's the retail association or the restaurant association. There's a lot of work already there. We don't have access to the same amount of funding on Woodward that we do downtown. And so that's why I think the Woodward Corridor needs a little bit more love. I know that there are a lot of projects that are looking at Woodward right now. I would say the biggest detriment to new investments on Woodward has been the city of Royal Oak, because we've been working through the marijuana licensing process. Mm-hmm. And one of the areas that was permitted for a marijuana grower or dispensary was the general business Woodward Corridor. And so you have a ton of properties that have been tied up for about a year, waiting to see if they may be able to get a license or not. Once we actually get through the process of issuing licenses, which should be within the next 30 to 60 days, I think a lot of those properties will go back onto market. And it's a complaint that I've actually gotten. It used to be the applicants for these licenses complaining, when are you going to get this stuff done? It was about November of last year that I started getting more calls from people saying, when are you going to get this done? I don't want to open up a dispensary. I have another business that I want to put in there, but everything's tied up. There's nowhere for me to go. So I'm very optimistic from the amount of interest that I'm receiving in the Woodward Corridor that you're going to see a lot of great projects initiated in 2022 and built and opening in late 2022 and early 2023.
That's really interesting, Todd. You're talking about, first people wanted to get these licenses, these, scarce licenses for marijuana operations.
Yes, there's only 2 retailers, and we had 37 applicants.
I'm sure you did. I'm surprised there's only 37.
It's hard to make everybody happy with those numbers.
But that's interesting that now that we're getting that part of it worked out, people want to get that part of it out of the way so they can either build their businesses, I assume, near it, away from it, or nothing to do with it.
Yes, and a very significant investment that we worked on pre-pandemic was Woodward Corners by Beaumont, where they took the old strip center and really they tore it down and started from scratch and tried to design it a little bit more like, a small town feel, not just a sea of parking that you walk into, whatever big boxes there. The anchor is actually Woodward Corner Market by Meyer. Yes, it's a large retailer, but it's a much more community feeling operation there. And that in and of itself spurred investment all up and down Woodward. And, kudos to Beaumont for pulling off that project where they were contemplating mergers and a lot of other things. But it definitely, I've seen a lot more interest in people that want to gravitate toward that area. That west side of Woodward has a lot of interest, and I try to keep them on the Royal Oak side, not the Berkeley side. But
of course,
that's an economic development joke. Everybody, we all succeed when everyone around us succeeds as well.
So Todd, in my personal experience, I feel like there's kind of 2 different types of workers. There's the workers who don't go out so much for lunches, and they're the workers who might want to work more from home. And then you have more of the social type of worker who is interested in, meeting up with coworkers after work or happy hour or meeting up for lunch with clients. And they're going to be the people who are wanting to be in the office more. So perhaps Royal Oak might be busier than ever because now you're going to have a group of people who are very social, wanting to get out and about and kind of be normal again of sorts. Do you think that is how Royal Oak is going to change?
I think we've already seen that, and the pandemic has been hard to have any sort of sense of stability in terms of predicting things as surges have come and go. During those lulls, you've seen it. I mean, we've seen, and I know from having conversations with our restaurants throughout town, we've actually seen more foot traffic in the last year than before the pandemic. And part of it is because we've expanded the opportunities for restaurants to do business within the city. I don't think people talk about this enough, but the restaurants that are doing well right now have looked at themselves in the mirror and have changed a lot of the ways they do business themselves and making upgrades or changing the menu.
Sure.
And we have a dynamic restaurant scene. I would say we're known more as a restaurant, hospitality, tourism, nightlife type city than as a place to go shopping. But to your point, Andrea, restaurants are inherently a social activity. And when you're seeing that, when you're seeing them, and this summer especially, when you're seeing that you actually couldn't get tables in a lot of places, not only was the demand for that type of socialization there and people wanted to run out there and take advantage of it, but we surely did have more people partaking in it as well. And I'm not going to say it's because there weren't activities to do in any other city. I think it's just you've got more people that are looking at Royal Oak in a different way. I laugh because I tell people, I think Royal Oak used to be really like a $5 a pitcher town when you had places like Woody's, and it was really Friday and Saturday nights. And now it's really a $5 a pint town where a lot of the restaurants have upped their game and it's a different clientele. Not to say that we don't have places where the younger people can kick back and have fun on Friday and Saturday nights, but I do think you've seen a much more eclectic and diverse sense of restaurant offerings in the city than you did, let's say, even 5 years ago.
So, Todd, we recently found out that Royal Oak is going to be receiving $28 million in money from the feds. So what is the discussion around how this money is going to be used?
That's a great question, Lisa, and it's actually the endeavor that I'm working on as we speak. We were designated $28 million through the American Rescue Plan Act. It's a fairly sizable amount of money. There are really only 4 distinct ways that you can spend it, and it's responding to the health emergency, providing premium pay for essential workers, to provide government services to the extent of the revenue losses that you experience through COVID, and then to make, and this is very specific water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure improvements. So this law was signed in March of 2021. We didn't get the final rule from the Department of Treasury on eligible activities until last month. What we have been doing is we have a firm, their name is Guidehouse. They're also working with the state of Michigan and Oakland County, who have been working with our commissioners individually and with city staff and department heads to gauge what those priorities would be in terms of spending this money.
And Todd, I know you presented their recommendations to the City Commission in the middle of February. If our listeners want to see those recommendations, they can do so at the Royal Oak, Michigan City website. It's www.romi.gov/ARPA. That's ARPA. We'll also link that in our show notes. And I know you're going to conduct community engagement on this later on this spring.
I think that there's going to be certainly opportunity to assist businesses that may have been negatively impacted by the pandemic. This is consistent. We've been spending millions of dollars over the last 2 years in restaurant and retail relief to get people through, what was a once in a lifetime cataclysmic event in some ways. I think another significant amount of that will go to water infrastructure, lead line replacement for older homes in the city that still had lead pipes, and really tackling, it's always been an issue in the city, but stormwater mitigation, whether retention or detention, putting in more bioswales, things that we can do to try to lessen the impact of water going into the system to prevent those once-in-a-lifetime flooding occurrences that unfortunately are occurring more than once in all of our lifetimes.
Sure.
We need to work to address that as soon as we can.
So Todd, it's been great to hear all about this, and we would love to hear a little bit more about you. What do you do when you're not working? Do you have a favorite hobby?
I'm actually a film geek, so I'm obsessed with cinema. I actually did not plan on being an economic developer by trade. I went to University of Michigan and I was a film and English major, and spent 5 years after that in Los Angeles working in development of that sort, and hated to see how the sausage was made. So I pivoted. I came back to Detroit and I went to law school, and I was working with Wayne County Corporation Council. And they were actually in the process right after 2008 when the economy had cratered again. It was crisis creates opportunity, and they were reworking their economic development team. And had asked me, because I was working on the civil side with a lot of business projects, whether I'd like to be a part of it. And that's how I eventually ended up in this seat. But I always look at myself as a writer first. And, the same skill sets that you use in telling a narrative, whether it's fiction or whether it's nonfiction, are really the same. How we sell the city of Royal Oak is a narrative.
Todd, I feel like writing is important no matter what it is that you do. And it's funny, you didn't like how the sausage was made in Hollywood. Now you get to see how the sausage is made in the city of Royal Oak, right?
Yeah. And you know what? I feel like I have much more of an impact here at this level. And it's really one of the great things about my job.
Sure, yeah.
You get a lot more gratification when you can actually touch what you have done at the local level, that this is here. And it may not have been here without, the work that I did or some of the other members of our team.
Absolutely.
Definitely during the last 2 years of COVID, as stressful as it is, and you're working with people who are worried about losing their businesses, most of our businesses were able to get through that. And we'll take some credit of helping them financially, but it was a real community effort. And I applaud not only our businesses for really being able to pivot incredibly quickly as we're having a lockdown. We're not having a lockdown. Now we have got some seating that's available. Now, today we don't. And our residents who showed up and frequent these businesses and kept them going. It's just a great community to be in. And it's hard for me to really seriously look at going somewhere else right now.
Well, the city is lucky to have you, Todd. As we wrap up, we are going to ask you our patented Fishbowl question of the day, where we pull a totally random question for you. It's our last question we're going to ask you. Lisa, can you pull the Fishbowl question of the day, please?
Yes, let's dig in here. All right. We've got a good question for you. Who is your hero?
That is a very good question. Wow.
Just first one that comes to your top of your mind.
Honestly, the first one that came to mind was my wife. So,
Aww.
Todd, that is perfect. Your wife, quit while you're ahead, game, set, match.
Thank you, John.
Yes, absolutely. So, Todd, what are some of the best ways that people can get in touch with you if they want to reach out?
Absolutely. I can be reached via email, toddf@romi.gov, and our website is romi.gov. And in particular, if you're looking for sites or economic development information, it's romi.gov/business.
My name is Lisa Bibby, and I am a realtor with Keller Williams Advantage. I put the real back in realtor. Looking to buy or sell your home, purchase an investment property, or even start an Airbnb? You can find me on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram at Sold by Lisa B.
My name is Andrea Arndt. I am an intellectual property attorney at Dickinson Wright, and I help my clients protect their inventions and build their brands. You can find me on LinkedIn and on our firm's website, www.dickinsonwright.com.
And I am John Gay from Jag in Detroit Podcast. For help creating a podcast, improving your existing show, or any questions about podcasts, you can find me online at jagindetroit.com or on social media at jagindetroit. I want to thank you for joining us for this episode of the Rocc Pod, presented by the Royal Oak, Michigan Chamber of Commerce. For more information on the Chamber, you can go to royaloakchamber.com. Thanks, everyone.